I just wanted to remind you all that Africa Fire Mission does offer this training for free, and it'll also be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards if you all would like to go back for a later review. And also after the training, we are going to have some tea time with Jose. So feel free if you have any questions over Howard's training or just any other pertinent information or questions about fire training to stay on after that. You're more than welcome to ask those questions or unmute yourself during the training to ask questions as well. And this year we are offering certificates, and we are offering those certificates of attendance to anyone that attends at least 70% of the live training. That does not include tea time or our YouTube videos afterwards. But right now I am going to just pass it off to Nancy. I think she has just some New Year's wishes for you all.
So happy New Year, everyone. So excited to see you. For those that don't know me, my name's Nancy Moore. I'm the Executive Director, which is a new title for me at Africa Fire Mission. We've had a transition here in the new year. So excited to be with you today. As the producer this year, you'll be seeing mostly Leah at the beginning of the trainings along with Jose and our instructor. But I just wanted to greet you today. And as we come into this new year, we're just thinking about all of the work that you will accomplish this year. And as you participate in trainings, both with us and with others, with each other at your stations, we just hope that you'll continue to work to improve and to get better. And we want you to know that many of us are praying for you every single day as you do your work. So with that, I'm going to sign off, and Jose is going to greet you and give some words of encouragement. Then we'll get started with training.
Thank you, Nancy. Truly appreciated. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everyone. Karibuni nyote. We truly love you guys at Africa Fire Mission. And as we start the year, my encouragement of the day today would be more of what the Bible says in John chapter 15, verse 12 to 13. It reads, "This is my command, love one another as I've loved you. No one has greater love than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends." Well, that verse might be really looking quite easy, you know, but then you can imagine laying down your life for your friend. And you as a firefighter, or us as firemen or fire ladies, we get to lay down our lives for people we don't know. So for us, what we need to do is to constantly practice, constantly be on the, when you're in your firehouse, constantly get to do something. If it is ropes, get to be good in ropes. If it is search and rescue, you can actually practice that when you're searching and rescuing. If it is stop the bleed, make sure that you get to practice, so that when you're out there doing the rescue and the fire suppression, you are actually knowing what, so you can be sure to actually bring that love, you know, create that greater love, and laying down your life for somebody else who desperately needs it. So even as we move ahead this year, please, let's keep on practicing and making everything worthwhile. Howard, back to you. Take us away, sir.
Hi, everybody. Well, what a great turnout for this first session of the year. Happy New Year to all of you, since it is, of course, a new year, and I understand that it is no matter when I see you for the first time, I'm supposed to say Happy New Year to you. So Happy New Year. I'm just adjusting my slides here so that they fit my screen the best. And just give me 2 more seconds. I think I'm set to go now. Let me share my screen. For one of the firefighters asked for closed captions. We are working on trying to set that up. I don't know how to do that from my end right now. I think but they're going to work on that. But a lot of what I'll say is will show up on the screen in text. So let me get started. You'll have a chance to ask questions at the end, but if you do want to ask a question, while I'm presenting, jump in. So I've been teaching with Africa Fire Mission now for over a year. I went to Kenya this past November, where I met Jose in person finally and did some teaching there. And I'm excited to be back again this year. And we have a great program set up for the year. So, who I am. All right. I'm a retired deputy chief of fire department of Bennington, Vermont. I'm also a semi-retired rabbi. And I've got 3 kids, and I live in the northeast corner of the United States in the state of Vermont. Before I jump in, I just want to say a big thank you. Thank you to all of you for coming out at the end of your day. Doing this online learning is challenging, so thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me your time. I want to thank all the firefighters who've gone before me, from whom I've taught. I've learned everything I know. I've learned from another firefighter, either one I worked with or someone who took the time to do a training like I'm doing for you. So in today's training, I want to address the question, do you go into a burning building or not? Now, I think this is a really compelling question for everybody, but especially for all of you, because as I understand it, in general, not everyone has access to a self-contained breathing apparatus or SCBA. Just because you don't have an SCBA doesn't mean you might not need to go into the building for some reason or another. So I think that this training is to really help you think about, should I go in or not? And so this is called go or no go. And it's also about assessing the fire scene. So if you're going to go into a burning building or not, you need to do 3 things. You need to decide, am I going to go? All right. Seems pretty straightforward. Do I decide to go or not? Well, what do I need to know to decide if I'm going to go in? And what do we do if we go in? So those are the three broad topics I'm going to be touching on. So I'm going to put up a picture here for you. You see a burning building. Lots of fire here. Pretty dramatic. Would you go into this building? Yes or no? Now, I'm going to let you play with that question in your own mind for a second and ask, should I go in? What are the conditions? What am I seeing that would tell me to go in? So here's how I'm going to answer this question. Let's see how it matches what your thoughts were. I can look over here in this part of the building, in the middle, where there's fire in the upper floors, and I'm going to be pretty hesitant to go in to those lower stores because there's an awful lot of fire above and it's already going through the roof. So that's telling me doesn't look good. Now, if I look to my left, I see another store underneath with the red light on. Well, is there a reason to go in there? Maybe it's a restaurant. I can't tell. Might be someone who's stuck in there. Might be apartments above there. That might be the way to get to them. So I might go into other parts of this building. But just looking at this, you have to ask yourself, would I go in? What's there to tell me to go in or not go in? So no, deciding to go or not to go is critical decision making. And it fits for if you're doing a rescue or if you're just going to do an interior fire attack. And it boils down to asking yourself 3 questions. What are we saving? what conditions exist to enable our inaction. In other words, is there do the conditions make it reasonable to think about going in? See some chats. Let me just make sure there's no one. No, okay. So, and third, what's the fire doing? What's the smoke doing? So we're going to talk about all three of these questions, how to apply them in the process of making a decision as to whether or not to go in. So first of all, we need to ask ourselves, what are we saving? If you're looking at a burning building, it's a warehouse and it's after hours, there's no one in there working, and the building's fully involved, is it worth going in? On the other hand, if you're looking at a residential place and there's a lot of fire, but there might be some survivable space, is it worth going in if you might be saving a life? So what are we rescuing? What are we looking to save? What's the building profile? What's the condition of the building? Does it look like it's going to collapse? Does it look like there's a lot of stuff on the roof that might cave in? What's it look like? What's the structure? What's the building made out of? So what's the building profile? And third, what's the fire and smoke doing? We're going to talk in more detail about all three of these things. So when you're thinking about the rescue profile, famous fire chief summed it up for us this way: we risk a lot to save a lot. We risk little to save little, and we risk nothing to save nothing. I was reading about a fire department out in California. They had some fatalities. I can't remember if it was one or two fatalities. When the firefighters were fighting a fire in a library. And when they looked back on the scene, looked back on the event afterwards, fire department came to the conclusion that if there's no one inside of the building, their policy was going to be, we don't go inside a burning building. Why risk a lot if all you're doing is saving possessions? Those are things that can be bought, replaced. You can't replace a life. So risk a lot to save a lot, risk little to save little, risk nothing to save nothing. So take a look at this picture. Can you see, is there any reason in your mind to go into this building? Do you see any survivable spaces within this structure? No. This building is totally involved. There's no reason to consider anything but an exterior fire attack on this building. Okay, let's look at this next picture. How about this one? You think there's any survivable spaces within this structure? Take a look at it and look at it closely. You can't see the back of the building, of course. We don't know what's going on there. But what you see from the front, what's your gut tell you? Survivable spaces? Worth going in to take a look to see if there's someone in there? I'm kind of curious. I'm going to look at my camera, see how many pictures I can see. Well, I can't do that either. So be honest and make a note and say, yes, there's a survivable space and I might consider going in here. If you think the answer is yes, write down yes on your piece of paper if you have it, or make a mental note, or no if you think not. Okay, I'm gonna take another picture. Same picture. Do you see where my arrow is pointing? Did you see this window over here in this corner? I don't see any fire coming out of that window. That's probably a bedroom. It's nighttime. There could be someone in that room, or there could be someone right even below that window. So yeah, there's survivable space here. And maybe I would go into this place. Now, I'm not going to go into the whole building poking around, but enter into that room and see if there's someone in there who could be saved. Why not? But in order to do that, I need to have some reason to think that there might be someone in there. So first of all, back here, that's a residential house. So, and it's nighttime. So those are two cues that tell me good chance there might be someone in there. Other things that might help out here. Someone might be hanging out the window. So help, hey, I need, I could see someone there. You could see him in the window. Or there might be reports from family or neighbors. The time of day might give you a clue that there's a reasonable suspicion of someone who's a savable victim in here. Are there external cues, such as cars in the driveway? Or no one outside, looking frantic because their house is on fire. So we're going to talk some more about cues a little bit later on, but just to get started, yeah, there's some cues that I might want to go into that room and see. Now, by the way, ideally, you'd have SCBA on, but if that's not an option, you could still make an entry into that room and do a quick search to see if there's someone in there and get out. So our protocol here in the United States is you got to have the SCBA. But if you don't have SCBA, are you willing to risk a lot to save a lot? It goes back to that formula. So take a look at this house. How many cues do you see here that would give you an indication that there might be some reason to enter this place and look for victims to save? So I see a lot. I'll point out what I see that would tell me that, yeah, this is a place I'm probably going to want to go into. Number one, it's nighttime. So it's a residential place. So families, and they're probably sleeping. Number two, there's a car next to the house. So somebody's home. And there's kids. I see the toys in the front. Different size, different kinds of toys. Looks like there might be a girl in there and a boy in there. And yeah, it's nighttime. They might be sucking down those fumes and gasping for air in their bedrooms. I'm going to definitely be developing a strategy to get inside this place. Plus, I don't see fire in the windows yet. No, we can't see everything from a picture, but these are definite cues to say, I'm thinking this is a go into the building situation. Okay. As you're thinking about going in, you need to ask yourself, can we access or protect the spaces with available or arriving resources? Can we get to where there might be savable space? It might be a bedroom in the back of the house that we can't get to from the front, and we don't have a ladder to get up there, or the back of the house is not in a situation that will allow us to put a ladder up. Do we have the resources available? You don't want to go in by yourself and have no one know that you've gone in, because now you're going to create two victims. If there's just two of you, who's going to know you've gone in? So you have to be aware of what resources you have. And you have to estimate the fire progress in relationship to the time you can gain access. Fires burn faster and hotter now because of all the carbon-based products in there. So what's the fire doing when you get there? And we'll talk a little bit more later on about fire progression. Okay, let's talk about building profile. What are the conditions of the building? You're trying to decide, should I go in? Is this building going to fail? If so, how will it fail? You don't want to be there when it collapses. What type of construction is the building made out of? Here in the West, we use a 5 code, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, and type 5 type of construction. I'll talk a little bit more about those here. And I don't know if you use the same labelings. It's a question I need to sit down with Jose one day and find out. But I will talk about the type of construction, because that will determine your strategy about whether or not to go in and what you're willing to risk. What's the occupancy of the building? If it's a library and it's after hours, no one's going to be in there. It's not worth risking a life to go in. What about a residential situation? Well, yeah, if there's people there, you definitely want to risk, you're willing to risk more. It goes back to Jose's teaching in the very beginning. If it's a residential and nobody's home, like it's in the middle of the day and there's no cars there and the neighbors are saying they're out of town, why go in? Same thing, warehouse, office, retail, what time of day? If it's an office or office or retail and it's middle of the night, there's not likely going to be anybody in there. But during the daytime, yeah. So all those things, occupancy, what it's residential or industrial, all those factor into your decision should you go in. Okay, let's talk about real quick different building types, because I brought it up. I just want to kind of go through these quickly. I'm really just going to read off my PowerPoint here, because this is not a training on building construction, but I did want to touch on these things because you do want to be aware of this as you make the decision about whether to go in. So we call type 1 fire resistive buildings type 1. As it says, these are constructed of concrete and protected steel. They're designed to hold fire for an extended amount of time. This would be, your modern high-rise kind of building. Type 2 non-combustible. Construction is typically found in new buildings and remodels of commercial structures. Now, I don't, in each of your districts, fire districts and cities, I don't know what kind of constructions you have. Some of you might not have any of these. Some of you might have lots of big buildings like this. Basically, the walls and roof are constructed of non-combustible materials. In other words, they're intended to not catch fire. It's a fine difference between fire resistive and non-combustible, but the main thing is these buildings don't catch fire very easily. The type 3, we call ordinary buildings. They can be either new or old construction. They have non-combustible walls and wood roof. They often have unreinforced masonry. So I think that you have a lot of unreinforced masonry. That's what I saw a lot of in Nairobi and throughout Kenya. And I suspect that's probably more common. Type 4 are heavy timbers. These tend to be in older buildings like churches. And yeah, Peter, I see you have your hand raised. I'll get back to you in a second. A lot of older churches have this heavy dimension, this heavy dimensional lumber. And of course, this depends on if you have a lot of trees in your area. Peter, go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
There was a mistake.
Oh, mistake. Oh, okay. And then finally, we here have most of our residential homes in the United States are made out of wood frame construction called type 5. These are very combustible. In fact, these go up in flames very easily these days because of all the products inside. So this is how we describe things. But the important thing to take away from this is, what is the construction of the building that you're considering going into? Let's get into fire profile. So fire profile involves a number of things. What kind of fire? What's going on with the fire? A lot of fire, is really cool to look at, but fire is not the most important thing for us to pay attention to when we are responding to a fire. Obviously we need to put the fire down, but when we're trying to read the scene, fire is attractive. It catches our eye, but we want to be paying attention to other things. To fire, the flames that you see, that's just where the heat is meeting the oxygen, and it's creating the flames. And the real that's usually not where the real action is happening. So paying attention to the fire profile is important. Fire, by the way, helps you, and the smoke will help you figure out the location of where the fire is burning, also gives clues to the progression of the fire. And then it'll give you some idea about the stages of fire. And in a fire dynamics course, I'd go into more detail about early growth or late stages of the fire, but just it's something to think about. In the early stages, the fire is building heat. The growth, it's getting bigger and bigger. In the late, it's burning out because either there's no oxygen or fuel. And I didn't skip smoke on purpose. I wanted to get to it last. We'll talk more about smoke because smoke is reading smoke is really important when you're considering whether or not to go into the building. And the two terms I want you to take away are laminar and turbulent. And I'm going to give you, we're going to talk more about these things, but laminar smoke is smoke that's moving out and kind of like a sheet, a nice smooth sheet. Not a lot of activity, not just kind of like a smooth blanket coming out versus turbulent smoke. Turbulent is dark and volatile looking. It looks like a big thundercloud and all kinds of activity. Being able to recognize laminar versus turbulent is not as easy as it might seem, but really important. So here's an example of laminar smoke. Now you see how the smoke is coming out. You know, it's not real volatile. It's not real forceful. There's not a lot of activity. It's just kind of coming out, drifting out. Changing a little bit here on the side where it's getting blacker. There it's starting to look a little bit more turbulent. But up here, it's just kind of drifting out. Then here's another laminar smoke. You know, this is telling you something about the stage of the fire. It's building. It's in the early stages. It's building up pressure. It's building up. It's the heat is building up. Then you get turbulent smoke. You see the difference? I mean, turbulent. It's this place is lit up. This place, not yet. It could go pretty easily if you put in too much oxygen, but right now it's not lit up like this one. So when you're reading smoke, and this is going back to that whole decision-making process, am I going to go in or not? There's 4 things you need to keep in mind. Volume. In other words, what's the size of the container? The bigger the building, the more smoke is going to build up. So if you come onto a warehouse building and you see smoke coming out of the windows or doors, you got a big building, you got a lot of energy going on inside there. So size, the volume tells you something about the container, the size where the fire is happening. Your velocity, laminar versus turbulent, we just talked about, gives you an indication of the pressure inside. As you know, high pressure seeks low pressure, right? If you heat up water in a tea kettle, you're heating up, that pressure is building, it wants to get out. So it pushes out with a lot of force. So if you see a lot of turbulent smoke, that's telling you that there's a lot of pressure building up in there. And that pressure building up can lead to some pretty hostile situations like flashovers or backdrafts or black smoke. Laminar means there's not a lot of pressure, but it's building. That's the velocity. Density, how much smoke? How much smoke is pouring out tells you something about what's burning, how much is burning. And the color gives you some indication, but there's so many funny things in our structures now that color is a little bit tricky to determine. However, if you have a crew who's making some advancement with water and they're cooling things down, you're going to see white smoke, and that'll tell you that your firefighters are making progress. So if you're on the outside and you're trying to make a decision about whether you should go in on a certain part of the building and you're seeing white smoke go, well, it's giving you a clue that your folks are making some progress. So these are the things you want to pay attention to: volume, velocity, density, and color. Now, to properly do a training on reading smoke, it takes hours and lots of looking at videos and lots of trying to sort it out. So this is just a general overview of the concepts. But reading smoke is important because it gives you an idea of how much fire you're dealing with. It helps you find the location of the fire. It helps you prioritize your strategies. Go or not go, interior, exterior. And by reading the smoke, you're protecting your firefighters and yourself. You have to remember, smoke is fuel. Smoke is on burn byproduct of the pyrolysis of the heating. Smoke will catch fire if it gets heated and it's hot enough. So keep that in mind, that where you see smoke, you're also seeing fire, potential fire. So now, again, if we were to go into more detail in reading smoke and how it can help you find the locations of fire and stuff, there are clues based on how the smoke is coming up. But we're working, and I'm working in sort of covering a lot of territory here and not going into a lot of fine point detail. 3 concepts in terms of fire, helping with the fire profile, that you want to keep in mind are what's called the flash point, the fire point, and the ignition temperature. I've written the definitions down here, but basically it boils down to flash point is the lowest temperature at which something that is potentially volatile or can catch fire, the lowest temperature at which it mixes with air and can ignite. So it has to, whatever it is has to start to evaporate, to gives off a gas, and every product has a different temperature level for the flash point. Fire point, slightly different than flash point. It's the lowest temperature at which the vapor of the fuel will continue to burn after it's ignited. Flash point is poof, what fire point is continues to burn. And ignition temperature is when things will spontaneously combust. We see this with certain cleaning solvents that if they'll just ignite if there's just the right amount of oxygen and their temperature for the evaporation, and they light up. So just some if we're doing fire dynamics, we would go into more detail about these things, but just keep in mind in terms of the fire, you're trying to think about what it is that's burning in there. All right. Moving along, I want to get into what's called black fire. You're reading smoke, you're trying to decide whether you should go in, and you see this black, ugly smoke coming out of here. This is telling you that there's high volume, there's a lot of pressure inside, high velocity. It's pushing really hard to get out to that low pressure area outside, out through the whatever venting spaces there are. It's going to be really dense. It's going to be black, and it won't take much to ignite this smoke into a big fireball. So again, reading the fire, reading the smoke helps you understand whether you're going to go in or not. So you're standing outside, you're trying to decide, do I want to go in? You're looking at the smoke coming out of here. It is a peculiar reality, a peculiar aspect of smoke that you can actually know where the fire is based on how the smoke is coming out. You're standing at the door and the smoke is coming, it's sort of like a 50-50, air going in, smoke coming out, kind of a 50-50 split. Fire is on the same level that you're on. If the smoke is not rising, what you're going to see is that the fire is generally below you. And if the smoke is stagnant or disappearing, the fire is above. I was trying to find some pictures that would show this to you, and I wasn't able to in the time I had. But if you go online, you could find these pictures, and it'll show you where the plane is between where the fresh air is coming in and the smoke is going out. And it's really interesting, but it's a telling way to help know. So smoke watching tips: watch the open doors and see what's going on. Smoke reading tip number 2: if it's thick, black, and fast, there's a lot of heat and it's explosive, and that's a dangerous situation. If it's thin, black, and fast, fire has already kind of passed by very, very recently. If it's white with speed, it's hot, but it's far away. And the whiteness means that the smoke has been cooling off, and it's, has less of the black combustible material in it. Okay, smoke reading tip number 3. Uniform speed and color from many places means the fire is deep seated in your structure. If it's brown, it generally means it's unfinished wood being heated. And this would be like a wood frame building. This would tell you that a collapse is likely. And if it's turbulent, that really black and ugly stuff, you're thinking about a flashover. I'm going to show you a video of a flashover, and you'll get a sense of what that looks like. It's not the best quality video because it was taken by someone with a camera, but with a phone at when it happened at the scene. And watch what these guys are doing. This, by the way, was in my state. You see the smoke coming out of there, how turbulent it is, how violent looking it is, and watch what happens. It's getting blacker and blacker. They're putting water on it, but the smoke is still looking horrible. And they're there. That's a flashover, my friends. All right. You see how that smoke was building and building and building. The pressure was building, And even though they were putting water on it, it wasn't making a difference. So as you're watching this, what are some things that come to mind about, positioning? What comes to mind? You could be critical, but because we're not throwing stones at these guys, we're just saying, yeah, I see this, I see that. So any observations? Go ahead and unmute yourself and share your observations.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
My observation was the smoke turning yellowish, and then the yellow smoke, black smoke. That means that it's a sign that the backdraft may okay, because of the moment they're pouring lots of water in there, and then when the water stream goes in with the fresh air, that's oxygen.
Yeah.
So it's now making the fire to be intense, or the heat to be intense, and then everything just, and then the flashover backdraft okay.
Right.
All right.
Yep. I mean, everything you're saying is spot on. One of what I noticed, and I want to point out, and it has to do more with situational awareness. You notice how they were right in front of the storefront, and as that smoke was billowing, nobody seems to be thinking, we're right in the line of fire if that blows, and that's exactly what happened. So it ruined their apparatus, and most of these guys, no one got seriously hurt, which is a good thing. But that's a good example of reading the smoke or failing to read the smoke. I want to fast track a little bit and just get to. I'm just going to skip some of my slides because I want to give you guys some time in a breakout. I want to jump in. You're going to think about whether you're going to go in or not go in. You got to do a size up. You got to get a 360 view of what's on fire. This is super important. Maybe you can't get 360 because of the structure and buildings around it, but you got to get as big a view of what's happening so you know what you're getting into if you're going to make that decision. So 360. Adelino, you have a question, right? You have your hand raised?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to know, due to the reading of that smoke, the person who was supposed to do the size up was the incident commander, the IC, and then in order to alert everybody that is inside that or in that building or near the building that there's gonna be a flashover or backdraft that's gonna okay. That everybody be on the safe side. Isn't it so?
Well, look, yes, that's true. However, I want to emphasize everybody on the fire scene is responsible for everybody else's safety. And, you know, if there was someone else, you know, if the pump operator saw that smoke, it was every bit as much his responsibility to yell to his fellow firefighters, get away, you got to change your position. You can't just say, well, the incident commander blew it. You know, yes, maybe the incident commander did. I can't say it because I don't know what else that person was doing. But yes, that's what you want incident commander for on the one hand. On the other hand, we should all think of ourselves as safety officers and all think of ourselves as having the authority to call out safety concerns whenever we see them. So, but thanks for bringing that up. So, I just want to emphasize step number one on this one. When you get to the fire scene and you have to make it, you're trying to decide, number one, don't stop and watch the fire. We're not moths. Don't get sidetracked by watching the fire. I'm going to skip the rest of this because I don't want to run out of time. I'm going to anyway. But remember that if you're going to go in, once you open up the window or a door, you're letting in oxygen, and that means you're feeding the fire. So you got to be prepared to go fast. Get in, move fast. Oh, by the way, when you first put in there, sound the floor and sound for maybe there's a victim right underneath the window, because that's where the victims are often found. So before you go in and go dropping in your tools and banging around, feel for a victim, then get in. And as soon as you get in, make a beeline to close off the door. If the door is open on the opposite side, you do this even if there is a victim in the room, because by shutting that door, you are increasing the safety for you and the victim you're trying to save. Here's a picture that shows you, this is the same house. The door on the left, where the room looks pretty okay, the door was closed. The door on the right, the door was open. It's 1,000 degrees difference between what happened in those two rooms. So you enter, you make a beeline, you close the door, and that's critical. Close the door once you get in. So quick summary, you did your 360-degree size up, you assume there's a victim, you've identified survivable space, you identified you have the resources. Now you go in, you enter, typo. You isolate by closing the door and you do your search. All right, I still got a few minutes to go. I'm gonna resend I'm gonna send a document to all of you, and what I want you to do is we're gonna put you into breakout rooms, and I want you to read this drill and with each other in your breakout room. And I can't make it, I'll try and make it as big as I can on my screen. Well, you can see it, but it's going to ask you to look at these buildings, and it gives you some information and then some questions. This is just a drill for everybody to do. You'll do it in the breakout groups. All right, so most everyone's back. I hope you were able to access that document and look at it. What kinds of questions or comments came up in your discussion? If you go ahead and unmute yourself, and if you have something you want to say.
Right. Group 2, anything that you would like to contribute? Caleb, Daniel, Francis, Joseph, Simpson, or Susan?
Hello, Mr. Howard.
Hi.
It's Masharia Joseph from the WFG Camp, Kenya. I would wish to appreciate the good presentation from our side, and also it shows how experienced you are when it comes to firefighting. It's not specifically my group, but I have 2 quick questions, not necessarily questions, but also maybe a bit of clarification on a general way for those who are not skilled on how to fight the fire. How are you supposed to prepare yourself so that you know whether to get in or not? That is one. The next thing, maybe I know it's not touching directly to today's session, but how will you determine the source of fire? Thank you. Back to you.
Well, the first question, if you're not trained, then don't go. Then I would not recommend going in under any circumstance. As the firefighter on the scene, you should be doing a job on the fire ground that you are qualified to do, or that your guidelines or protocol permit you as a untrained or undertrained firefighter. So that's my quick answer to that one. And so we have in my department, we used to have folks who are qualified to be do interior work, and folks who hadn't had the chance to do the full class, they in terms of training, we qualify them just to do exterior work, which could mean moving branches, moving lines, moving ladders, things like running tools, things like that. So each department has to come up with its own sort of standard of operating procedures for around what skill level, what training level you can do certain things. Your second question, trying to find the source of the fire. There's while you're in the process of firefighting, you can, it's not a foolproof, there's no foolproof way, but if there's a really tall column of smoke, that's probably where the source is, or at least where it's burning the hottest at that time. But after the fire, there are a whole lot of techniques that you could use to determine where the source was, and what the origin and the source was. But depending on what stage the fire is in, the smoke can give you some clue as to where it is. We're on to group 3. Nancy, you still there?
Yes.
We look like we're running out of time though. We have just 2 more minutes. So if we might just want to wrap up now, and we can maybe address the other questions during tea time, that might work a little bit better. But thank you, Howard, for your presentation today. We all greatly appreciated it. I do just want to remind everyone that the certificate of attendance will be sent out if you attended at least 70% of this live training. If not, then hopefully next time you can attend the whole 70% and we'll send that to you. But next week we're having Brian Anderson come, and he's going to be talking about the science behind fire. So you can use the same link that you used today to access that training next week. But I will pass it off to our fire safety advocate, Jose, and Howard, if he wants to stick around and answer some more questions as well, but just for some extended tea time.